Hi, I'm Barry Ostrowski. At RWJ Barnabas Health, we believe that everyone needs to be informed about the important healthcare issues affecting their lives. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by TD Bank, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Turl Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, New Jersey Resources, Verizon, the law firm of Gibbons PC, and by New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey, and by Commerce Magazine.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. This is one of the most compelling forums I've ever been a part of in my 25-plus years as a broadcaster. This is a forum on the future of urban education. If you caught the last one, you'll appreciate what we're about to do. If you haven't caught it or didn't catch it, go back online. You'll see our website. You'll see the first part of this. This is a fascinating conversation. The mayor has had interesting things to say about this, the superintendent, senator, others. But let's put the charter school situation in context. Charter schools started in Newark
20 years ago.
20 years ago?
Yep, 20 years.
What percentage of Newark school-aged children are going to public/charter schools versus more traditional public schools? Do we have a sense of that?
It's about 32%.
32%.
That's 18,000 students, parents who've chosen a charter school as their option here in the city.
Has it gone up considerably, Michelle?
It has in the last 10 years. It started about 10%, and it's grown to a third of students right now.
Could you define a public charter school, if you will?
Public charter school is a free education to students where school leaders have autonomy to really manage their budgets, to hire, fire teachers, and meet the needs of the students. And so there's a little bit of autonomy and freedom and a little bit of innovation that allows the school leader to make decisions, on location to meet the needs of
And traditional public schools do not have all of those
freedoms, correct.
Freedoms.
Charter schools are putting students on the path to and through college. Here in Newark, with a third of students in charter schools, we're the second highest performing charter sector across the country, and we're proud of that. That means more and more Black and brown kids are reading and writing on grade level. They're getting access to college and have the opportunity to, because the sector is now 20 years old, we now have students who've gone through charter schools, who've gone off to college, and are now coming back, and I think that's what we want.
A successful experiment.
Exactly.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead. I see you. I've known you long enough to really learn your body language.
Is that right?
Okay. At least I think I know, Mr. Mayor.
I've been on that show so many times. That's why.
And luckily, hopefully, we'll have you more. Mr. Mayor, share your thoughts on the charter school experiment.
Well, I would, first I want to concede that there are more kids that are successful because they have had experiences at other schools. But if I concede that, they also have to concede that, all of those experiences at all of those schools have not been the kind of perfect thing that, is put out there. And there's also a third of Newark students in magnet schools, right? In the magnet high schools that are doing—
Define a magnet high school, if you will, Mr. Mayor.
University high, technology, Science Park, Bar.
What does it mean, though?
History.
What does it mean?
These are like specialized schools what I think we need to pay a lot more attention to, by the way, that we don't. Kind of specialized schools with specialized curriculum that have usually requirements to get in. When this whole fight was started, people say, "Oh, you have to."
Was it a fight?
Yeah, it was a fight. It's not that way now, thank God, but it was like really.
What was the fight?
the fight, this whole charter versus traditional, the fight over resources, the fight over what's better, what's best, who's more successful, which I think is all distractions, by the way, and is organized to serve people's particular brands. Mm-hmm. You start treating it like a corporation as opposed to, you're really trying to make all of these kids successful. So the idea that everything that's working, we need to be talking about everything that's working and duplicating that more than let's just expand my brand.
It's just best practices. Right?
Yeah, just expand my brand.
But isn't it, devil's advocate, is it not fair to say, though, that charter schools do have certain advantages that traditional public schools do not have in terms of hiring and firing?
There's pros and cons to that.
Yeah. Okay, but also, who are the students who wind up going to charter schools, and how do they get there? Loaded question, I know. And does that have anything to do with success?
So one of the things that we know is important for success for students is the engagement and involvement of their families. And students who go to charter schools, their families have already made a decision that I'm going to be engaged and involved in. So that automatically
it's a big deal.
That is huge. That is a major, major difference. And I think also, I'm going to say in Jersey City, we don't have as many charters as you do in Newark. And by the way, I'd just like to thank you for inviting me to the Newark party.
Love having you.
But one of the things that, and even from when I was in New York City, where they had a lot of charters, I used to say, all you have to do is tell parents that it's a lottery to get in and they'll want to come in.
That's true.
And so, because we opened up a high school and we had no admissions requirement other than it was a lottery. It was open to everyone in Jersey City.
But you had to get selected.
But you selected by picking your name out of a bin. I say that to say that parents want the choice. They want to know that there is something innovative going on, and that's not limited to charter. And one of the things that we've tried to do is to give principals, school leaders, and teachers more freedoms to make those decisions. It's not always as easy because there are regulations from the state, but I think the critical part that you're talking about is when parents exercise and they fill out that paper, when they take that involvement, that already says we have a parent who will hold us accountable. We have a parent who has already set the stakes for children, and not every parent is at that place.
Hold on, you're saying that you believe that a significant percentage of parents of public school children, urban public school children, Newark, Jersey City, Camden, anyway, Philadelphia, we're seeing in New York, or a lot of places, that you think they're less invested in their...
No, I didn't say that they were less invested. I said they're not at the same point of holding us accountable. And so I feel that that's one of my major responsibilities, to ensure that they understand what we are supposed to be doing.
So, first of all, I want to echo the sort of unity of purpose here. And that purpose is we want to give every child a chance to go to a high-quality, free, open to all public school, however it came into being. I'm sure that we all agree on, we can all agree on that. But it's very important the way the dialogue sometimes goes in different directions here. So as the mayor correctly observed, 36% of our high school students go to a magnet school. A magnet school is not open to all. It involves screening for academic prowess or for artistic ability, or as the case may be. Those schools, by the way, are outperforming the charter schools.
Magnet schools?
The magnet schools in this city are outperforming the charter schools.
Is that happening around the country as well?
It's very hard to say. Newark has a greater commitment to magnet schools than any other city I am aware of.
Well, Montclair has a long-standing history as well.
In terms of percentage,
we're not a city in your mind, I'm sure, even though.
No. But the point I want to make, this selection bias point that my colleague Dr. Lyles makes, I have learned over the years, and I may be wiser as I get grayer on this, I do not like to draw comparisons between the performance of charter schools and district schools and magnet schools, because I can't rule out selection bias, but I can rule out a lot of the myths around
Such as?
Such as, we don't have lotteries in Newark anymore. We have taken control centrally.
For charter schools?
In charter school, of any school. We have taken control of the enrollment process of all K through 12 schools. We have taken charge of the enrollment process, including the charter schools, so that parents can identify on the basis of a bathe of information what school they would prioritize. And 47% of students who are entering into the Newark Public Schools choose a school, whether it's charter, magnet, or another traditional school that's not the school closest to them.
Not the, quote, neighborhood school.
It's not
47%?
47%.
Okay, Michelle, jump in.
So I would agree with you that we have to stop focusing on the what. A public charter school, a traditional public school, a magnet school. It shouldn't matter. Right. And that's where we're not at yet.
Right.
There should be neighborhood schools. Kids aren't going to their neighborhood schools. And when we opened up Newark Enrolls, parents in Newark...
Explain that. Newark Enrolls is...
Parents in Newark have a right to choose their school. If the school is not in the neighborhood and there's a whole criteria process, parents have a right to choose. And parents are choosing.
Well, 47%
there are
of high school
thousands
students
of
are not
parents that are
choosing.
choosing.
K through 12.
Okay, but hold on.
Wait, can I hear that stat again? 47%?
Listen, I'm only going by...
I missed that. What was it?
Say it again. 47%.
Of students who enter into the Newark public school system, they're asked to rank their priority 1 through 7, I think, or 1 through 8, first choice, second choice, etc. Around 47% of students who rank as a first choice a school that is not the one that is nearest to them.
47. Is that striking to you? Is that striking to you, Sarah?
Yeah, it does, because I think, you know, we've talked about a lot. The reason why the state did take over the Newark public school system is because we have been entrenched in decades of low academic achievement. And unfortunately, we have pockets of good schools and we have pockets of failing schools. And oftentimes, our neighborhood schools are the failing schools. And so I think what I wanted to add to that the mayor, the superintendent, and Michelle have iterated is really about the need to make sure that every child has the opportunity to go to a good public school, no matter whether it's a district and a charter.
Or in your neighborhood or not.
Or in your neighborhood or not. And I think that Newark has done a really good job of, you know, there have been some conflicts in the past, but has really pushed that bar forward of taking what has worked in the charter school. What can we bring to the public schools?
That's not
what
happening
can we do?
enough, though.
It's not happening enough.
It's not happening enough. And that's
where... Well, I'll come back to you, Senator, in 1 second. But your final point here is...
It's not happening enough, but there are pockets of it, and that's what we want to build upon.
But don't we want to learn as to what is working, why it's working, and replicate it? Senator, you're saying it's not having enough.
But the issue, so I want to circle back in a couple of things. I think Michelle pushed back on the students in the charter school are excelling. The mayor touched on this. I want to say
Michelle Adubato or Michelle Mason?
Michelle Mason. Okay. I want to say we have students that are excelling and attending Ivy Leagues in both sectors of our district.
Both sectors,
so
meaning?
I just want to make that clear for all the traditional and charter schools.
And magnet schools.
We have success stories across the board. This 47%, I'm stuck on this, I'm sorry, because I keep losing it. They're choosing a different school outside of the neighborhood.
Right, that's right.
The question is how many of them are getting that option to attend that school, because we don't have, if we have 10 families selecting, 5 great schools, we don't have enough seats for everyone to attend a phenomenal school yet. I think that is what we're working towards.
Exactly right.
I hope that everyone here will be working towards that.
But the reality is we had 46 different campuses, and talking about parents and selection, the common enrollment process allows all parents to access the system regardless of where they live, regardless of zip code. I've heard the mayor say your destiny should not be determined by your zip code. Your block should not determine your blessings. And so the reality is we don't have great schools in every single ward.
Not
so how do we level the playing field by access?
Sorry, what are you taking away from this right now, the biggest message?
Well, so one of the challenges with charter schools, let's put it this way, they seem to do pretty well if you have them be a very small part of your overall portfolio of schools, so that they really are places where you innovate.
Well, now it's 30+%.
Right.
In Newark.
Here's the concern about, one of the concerns about charter schools, which we know from research around the country. We've been doing this for 30 years now. Charter schools vary greatly, just as public schools do. You have excellent ones, you have not so good ones. The excellent ones do some things that we can't scale up or that we don't want to scale up. They exclude children with disabilities who don't do well in that particular school.
That's not true.
So they don't exclude them on the front end. They push them out on the back end. They also
Dare you call that cherry picking?
You call that, well, it's more than cherry picking. It's you get there, and if you're not performing up to a certain standard, then you're pushed out.
Okay.
I'm talking about nationwide. I can't speak to Newark in particular. A second concern is, which is wonderful in the small scale, which is that teachers work much longer hours. You know, the amount of corporate investment in these schools is much greater in some cases, like KIPP.
Superintendent, put this in context, Dr. Justice from Rutgers, who researches education, that to some extent, charter schools get to not only pick who they want to have, but at the same time, if you're not doing well, they can throw you out. That is not the case in traditional public schools. Do I have that wrong?
You do, sir. You do have that wrong. First of all, when I was state commissioner in New Jersey,
Of education,
I oversaw the closure of approaching 20% of the charter schools.
Closing them?
In the
Why?
state, because they were not meeting their obligation to successfully educate children. So we are absolutely aligned, and I feel that in the room here, is that we all believe that equitable access to a quality public school is a value that must be pursued regardless of how a school came into being. But you know, myths and conspiracy theories are very, very difficult to knock down. But a couple things that are important to say, right? I agree with the sentiment before that parents who are maybe more likely to be influenced by academically oriented information may disproportionately select charter schools. By the way, they overwhelmingly disproportionately select traditional public schools that happen to be called magnet schools as well, or county vocational tech schools, which again need to make their way into the conversation. But we policed every single charter school to see whether their recruitment strategies, Robert Treat in particular.
Robert Treat in this community,
in this community, whether they were trying to access equally all children, whether they played games in how they admitted people. And we also I looked as superintendent here at every single student who changed schools in the city of Newark in a year. Did they disproportionately go from traditional public school to charter school, from charter school to traditional public school?
What did you find?
I found that they, by far and away, a larger percentage of the transfers were from traditional public school to traditional public school than from charter school to public school. There is a highly transient population here, but I did not find a correlation with charter and special education. I think the number is around 11% of students in charter schools have an IEP.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
I think we then have to circle back to neighborhood schools. The idea that a child has to go across districts, across wards to get to a good school is absurd. Why should we settle for that? And I don't think Newark is. So the idea of the charter schools, and yes, in the beginning, they're absolutely, when charter schools, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I think charters, public, by the way, charters are public schools, and I have to remind everyone that charter schools are public schools.
But they're not exactly the same as traditional
they are
public
not,
schools.
and let me tell you, as a principal in a traditional public school, let me tell you what I felt envious of while I was trying to run my school, is that I did not have the power to hire, to fire, or promote. You tell me how you run a business, a school, or anything without a power to hire, fire, or promote.
And so, yes, Robert, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll come back to Michelle and Senator. Go ahead.
So a couple things. I think that when we generalize, we get into very dangerous territory. And if history has taught us anything, we can look at Nazi Germany, we can look at the segregated South. When we just make these blanket statements and say, charter schools are better, or we have to learn from what the charter schools are doing.
Not true?
That is absurd.
We learn from each other.
What makes a quality school? The people.
Let's go through it.
In
Let's go
that
through it. I'm sorry
building.
for Robert. You've taught You've been a deputy superintendent. You
I created my own magnet
created your
school,
own magnet school? Okay.
Which was not a real magnet school, by the way. It was right down the street from Central High School.
Where the mayor, before he became the mayor, was the principal. Go ahead.
And he can tell you, the kids that I served at American History High School, quote-unquote magnet school, weren't very different from the kids that he served at Central High School.
So let's talk about this. Magnet school, charter school, traditional public school, some of the keys, and I want everyone to jump in here. The keys to a successful urban public school, regardless of where you're watching us right now, they are, let's name some things.
I'll call leadership out as the first one.
High quality teachers.
Performance-based leadership being one. The second one, and I think the most important variable, is teachers implementing research-based practices that we know work, and based on the mission and purpose of that school that the leader brings to the table.
Stay there. Sarah from Prudential, from the corporate community, a key to success, there's probably a million different things, but one of the keys is?
In addition to what Robert said, I would say a focus on academics and a focus on social-emotional supports.
Give me the emotional, social support.
Especially when you're in an urban community, as we discussed before, when students face so many challenges walking into school, whether because they didn't have food on the table, they didn't have safe passageways, there's a lot of social-emotional skill sets that they need support around. So having the services, the programming, and then the staff support around that is incredibly important.
Sorry for interrupting. Mr. Mayor, and I'll come back to you, Doctor, stay right there. You ran a successful urban school. One of the keys that has not been mentioned is?
School culture is extremely important. Shared value and shared vision is also important. I just think that we're looking at this discussion the entirely wrong way, and we continue to do that.
Help us.
You know, all of the time. Parents just want something different. Like, so we argue the parents are choosing charters, they're choosing a magnet. They just don't want to go where they're at.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And it's not about, them wanting to be outside their neighborhood. They would much rather prefer that their child do not have to catch 2 buses to go to school.
That's right.
The problem is these are neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades, right? Neglected economically, politically, socially, academically, for a long period of time. There's been serious benign, malignant, I should say, neglect happening in those communities.
Intentional?
Yes, and in some cases intentional. So that's why you see the number of kids that are moving from those neighborhoods to these various schools are coming from the same places. They come from the same places. They're not all over the city. They're coming from the same places in the South Ward, same places in the West Ward, where the violence is, where high levels of poverty are. All these things are happening. So it's not like a magic reason why people are moving that. And as long as we neglect those, it's always going to be the case and say, look, we're offering this and offering that. And we have to be honest and real about all of this. I mean, people want their neighborhood to be better. The school is a reflection of the neighborhood. It's just that simple, right?
Mr. Mayor, what are we missing in this conversation?
So there are schools that, even charter schools that go to those neighborhoods, right, that are in those neighborhoods, have
really tough neighborhoods, you mean?
Have a difficult time, right? There's some in those communities, like, so if you take the experiment at Bregal and Hawthorne, same thing is happening.
Explain that to folks.
So we decided the school is a mess, so we're gonna put a charter school there. So you take the school and you put a charter school there, and the outcomes are basically the same, right? So there's something to be said about the neighborhood, the community, something that's going on with the families and things that we have to address. We can't ignore that and say it's just the school, we need a good leader, the teachers are terrible, and try to put people there and fix that, and it's going to be an automatic fix. It's just not going to work unless you address the community.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Mayor. As I ask this question, Dr. Lyles, and I'll ask others as well, when I ask what are the keys to a successful urban school, the mayor seems to be saying the question in and of itself is a flawed question, because it isn't what happens in the school itself, teachers, principals, others. It is a much larger question. Do you see it the same way?
Well, I think it is a larger question going back to the initial conversation.
It's both. It's not either or. It's not mutually exclusive, Mr. Mayor.
That it's not, that schools do not operate in silos. They operate in communities. But I think that what happens in the reference to, like, putting a charter now in a school, it's still that community. There is this, for me, a critical element is around expectations. And expectations about what can happen for children who live in certain areas. You started the conversation with, well, why can't, that the question is why can't?
That many ask.
Right, that many ask, but it's not why can't, it's they haven't. Why haven't they? Because when we say can't, we automatically set up a mindset that maybe they really can't.
That's
but
good.
The question is why haven't they yet, and what are we going to do about it? And it has to be that we address all of these issues. We address the community. They're not in a vacuum, but by the same token, we have to have the expectation that not only the children can do it, the families can do it, but that we can do it.
Right.
Because we get beat down and start to say, oh, well, what do you expect? No, we expect.
What do you expect, by the way?
I expect that every child that comes into a classroom in Jersey City Public Schools is transformed to a future that's beyond our now expectations or beliefs.
Right.
That's other than that, why are we collecting paychecks? Why are people sending children to our schools? They may as well keep them at home if we're not going to make that kind of difference.
You can see that the 9 folks that we have brought together talking about the future of urban education have different perspectives, valuable perspectives, important perspectives. So I'm going to do this. We'll continue our conversation, but I'm going to ask you to stay with us. This is a multi-part series looking at the future of urban education. A lot of it's about Newark. Some of it's about Jersey City, but all of it is about the children, the millions of children in the public schools in urban communities across this nation. Catch us next time.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by TD Bank, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Turl Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, New Jersey Resources, Verizon, the law firm of Gibbons PC, and by New Jersey Sharing Network, transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
You may not have heard of TAVR. Raj and Sandhya have. It's the minimally invasive alternative to open heart valve replacement. RWJ Barnabas Health is New Jersey's leading TAVR provider, and we continue to perfect it. Patients are often back to their lives in just a few days. Innovative valve replacement surgery. Because you can't be replaced. RWJ Barnabas Health. Let's be healthy together.